What I'm going to play for you now, ladies and gentlemen, is something Larry Elder's played this several times, so I decided to record them, and it's in response. I've already done one response to Latifah Faisal on this subject. Check the links below the video. And they're jousting with Hillary Clinton supporters versus Donald Trump supporters on stolen elections 2016 through 2020. And I'll bet you if I look through Latifah Faisal's archives, I wonder if she was giving Hillary the same treatment for suggesting her election was stolen. But anyway, she was screeching. Latifah Faisal was wringing her Vienna sausage fingers, and she was all hot and bothered over violence and the dang insurrection at the Capitol, and we got to do something about it because they're violent, and we better have, it's a threat on the democracy that America has never been. So here's something that Larry Elder's played several times concerning violence after elections. And I'll also mention, and I have this over as the pinned comment on my Old Fart Rants Debunked page. If you find a diverse city that is chock full of homicide, chock full of fatherless children, chock full of people being paid not to work, even before the pandemic, and it's full of homicide, and it's a crummy place to live, and the population is declining, odds are it's a city run by Democrats. Take it away, Mr. Elder. And Latifah Faisal, stick this in your pipe and poof it.
The other is, well, Hillary didn't file any lawsuit overturning the election. Yes, she did. She joined a lawsuit filed in Wisconsin by the Jill Stein campaign, claiming that Donald Trump won that state by just 22,000 votes. And the Hillary lawsuit even demanded a hand recount. So much for the Hillary didn't file any lawsuits to overturn the election argument. And the final argument is that Hillary supporters did not storm the Capitol on January 6. No, not on January 6. This is from the BBC, dated November 11, 2016, right after the election. And I'm quoting. Headline, Protests turned violent in Portland, Oregon. May I read you part of the article? Well, Larry, it is your show. Quote, overnight protests against the election of Donald Trump as U.S. president turned violent in Portland, Oregon. About 4,000 demonstrators gathered in the center of the western city. Some smashed shop and car windows, threw firecrackers, and set rubbish alight. Smashed shop and car windows. Quote, police in Portland accused some demonstrators of carrying bats. I don't think they mean the coronavirus bats. Bats and arming themselves with stones. Objects were thrown at the police, who responded with pepper spray and rubber baton rounds. Demonstrators in Minneapolis briefly blocked an interstate highway in both directions. But none of her supporters stormed the Capitol. I'll give you that. Okay, so that's election. This is inauguration. This is from Reuters. January 19, 2017. Violence flares in Washington during Trump inauguration. Quote, black-clad activists among hundreds of demonstrators protesting Donald Trump swearing in on Friday clashed with the police a few blocks from the White House in an outburst of violence rare for an inauguration. In the violence, knots of activists in black clothes and masks threw rocks and bottles at officers wearing riot gear, who responded with volleys of tear gas and stun grenades as a helicopter hovered low overhead. At one flashpoint, a protester hurled an object through the passenger window of a police van. Earlier, activists used chunks of pavement and baseball bats to shatter the windows of a Bank of America branch and a McDonald's outlets, all symbols of American capitalism. Multiple vehicles were set on fire, including a black limousine. People dragged garbage cans in the street, set them ablaze. Police and 6 officers were injured in scuffles with protesters. Are you with me here? Are you with me here? So please don't give me this business about Hillary supporters didn't do anything violent. Election night? Inauguration? Let's ignore all of that. And let's have Hillary kick back, call Donald Trump stolen, say the election was illegitimate, do it on CNN, do it on NBC, do it on CBS. Nobody says a damn thing. But Donald Trump, without a Senate investigation as took place with respect to the 2016 election, and concluded 0 evidence of any single vote being altered, no evidence whatsoever the Russians changed a single vote tally, yet a supermajority of Democrats believe that they did. And they couldn't come up with any conclusion one way or the other about whether or not the Russian efforts alter the outcome of the election. But 78% of Democrats, a higher percentage of Democrats than Republicans who believe the 2016 election was stolen, a higher percentage of Democrats believe the 2016 election was stolen than Republicans who believe the 2020 election was stolen. Is this thing on? This is what happened after Trump won the 2016 election.
Some overnight news to tell you about. Thousands of protesters swarming the streets of several major cities following the surprise election of Donald Trump. Reports say that at least 30 people were arrested in New York for disorderly conduct. Wow. In Los Angeles, more than 100 protesters shut down a major highway. And in Seattle, a crowd estimated at several thousand people marched and chanted, "Not my president."
Over bonfires, fireworks, tear gas, and marching in the street. Thousands turn out on both sides of the bay to protest President-elect Trump.
Let's take you live straight to Sky 7 now in Oakland, live at this hour, at least 100.
But Larry, Hillary supporters didn't storm the Capitol building on January 6th.
50 people are still out on the street, but earlier, as many as 7,000 were demonstrating. Some set fires. A police car has been vandalized, and one officer has been injured.
Protests against Donald Trump's election victory surged overnight, and some became violent.
Officers in Portland, Oregon confronted thousands of protesters in what police called a riot. Some demonstrators smashed store windows. Protesters faced off with police in other cities, too, including Oakland, Denver, and Minneapolis.
Making news in America this morning, breaking overnight. People
But Hillary supporters didn't storm the Capitol building on January 6th.
filling the streets in America's cities, protesting President-elect Donald Trump.
Crowds set fires, blocked freeways, and gathered at Trump's buildings
Hillary supporters aren't violent the way Donald Trump supporters are.
all across the country.
But for the 4th straight night, protests are happening across the country in cities big and small. Some protesters turning violent, attacking police. It's a sign of just how
attacking the police.
divided our country remains, as you saw earlier in our poll numbers.
Anti-Trump protesters flooded streets through much of the night. Thousands of demonstrators marched, carrying banners and disrupting traffic. Signs with the message, "Not my president," showed the marchers' refusal to accept Donald Trump's victory. The protest broke out in at least 38 cities around the country, including right here in New York. Police there arrested dozens of people.
Sigh. But Larry, Hillary supporters, they're not inclined to violence the way Trump supporters are. Now, that was after Trump got elected. Do you recall Inauguration Day in Washington, D.C.?
Not everyone gathered here in Washington today came to celebrate President Trump's inauguration. Protesters lined part of the parade route, and in some parts of the Capitol, there were confrontations with police.
Blocks from the White House, but far removed from the peaceful transfer of power, anti-Trump protests turned violent today. More than 200 people were arrested. 6 police officers were wounded.
Burning cars and smashed windows. A small group of protesters dressed in black, their faces covered, armed with hammers and bricks, facing off with thousands of officers on site.
When has there been violence on Inauguration Day? Any other president can you think of?
Not all protesters got permits. Some didn't want to bother with them. preferred to create chaos in the streets. More than 200 arrests, plenty of tear gas, 6 officers reportedly injured.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Hey. Black Lives Matter!
So can we dispense with this nonsense that Hillary supporters were not violent? Hillary supporters would not have stormed the Capitol on January 6th had she been president? Please. When I post this on social media, well, Hillary didn't do it. You guys, do you ever watch anything other than CNN, MSNBC? You ever get out of the house, talk to anybody else? For 4 years and counting. 4 years and counting.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president who got illegitimate foreign help. He knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that...
If you turn on CNN, 15 minutes may go by, if that, before one of the hosts or pundits or guests refers to Donald Trump, so on, quote-unquote, big lie.
There were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did. You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you. I know that he knows that this wasn't on the level.
Why do you think the president is going to such great lengths to essentially prove that he beat you?
Because he knows he didn't. He knows he's an illegitimate president. I do think that he knows that he's an illegitimate president.
All right.